Welcome back to the shop, everybody. Today, we're tapping. Today we're going to be talking about tapping holes. I'm going to show you 3 different methods. First thing we're going to need is a number 7 drill bit. That's going to be our tap drill. We're going to need to select the proper tap for the job. Then we're also going to need a tap handle. And finally, we're going to use some tapping fluid. Make sure that you're using the right tapping fluid for the material that you're tapping. We're going to be tapping aluminum, so we're going to grab aluminum one. So first thing that we need to do is to drill our holes, our tap holes. You're going to select the correct drill bit from the chart that I gave you. In this instance, we're tapping a 1/4-20 hole, so that's going to need a tap drill of a number 7. When you put it in the chuck, make sure obviously it's nice and tight in there. It is a keyless chuck on the drill press, so all you have to do is tighten it by hand. Select yourself some parallels. Keep your workpiece up off the vise. And securely fasten your workpiece. Now we're using a mill vise, so it's going to be a little bit easier for you to adjust where the hole position is. If this wasn't a mill vise, you would just have to move the vise to the correct position and lock it down. This vise makes it a little easier to select the proper position. Once over the hole, we're going to be setting our machine speed. So this is going to happen just like on the mill. We need it running. We're going to be in forward high. And then using the big handle on the top, we can adjust our speed. 1,000 RPMs should be just plenty for this drill bit. I want you guys to get used to using the peck drilling method when we're drilling holes like this. It creates a smaller chip. It's a less dangerous chip, not a long stringy chip that's flinging around. Also really good when we're drilling deep holes. Allows the cutting fluid to get down where the cutting action's happening. Also allows us to clear those chips, evacuate those chips so we're not recutting the chips. Once we've gone all the way through from our hole, turn off the machine before moving it. We don't want any accidents happening. Position it over your next hole and continue the process for all the remaining holes. You see me using cutting fluid here. We want to use that on every hole. Helps lubricate the process and keep things cool. If I was drilling a deeper hole, I would be adding more coolant throughout the drilling process. Once you're done drilling your holes, please make sure to remove the drill bit from the chuck and put it back where it goes. And now we're ready to move on to the next step. First method we're going to use is the hand tap method. This is nothing more than a tap wrench and a tap. It's very important in this one to get your tap straight in line with the hole. If I tap it at an angle, my bolt's going to go in at an angle and it's not going to seat flush with the bottom. So I'm going to check it from a couple different angles and make sure that it's actually plumb with the hole and straight up and down before I start actually feeding the wrench in. So when tapping holes like this, it's important that we break the chip off, especially with smaller taps. If we allow those chips to clog up, we're going to end up breaking our tap. So you're going to see me back the tap up a little bit, and that's just breaking the chip. You're going to hear a distinctive crack every time that you back the tap out a little bit. That's breaking the chip, allowing it to fall through the bottom and not clogging up the tap flutes. Do that about every turn. So one turn, back about a quarter. One turn, back about a quarter to remove those chips or break those chips out. Once the tap is nice and straight, we're just going to continue that process until we get all the way through. For this particular application, it's a through hole, so I've selected a taper tap, which is going to give me the best opportunity to be as straight in the hole as possible. Taper taps help me align a little bit straighter with the hole right off the bat. However, I can't do a blind hole with a taper tap. I'd require 2 taps. either a plug and a bottoming or a taper and a bottoming in order to finish. The next method we're going to use is the tapping jig. So this one, you can see it's a fixture that actually holds the tap in there, and that large piece that I'm holding is the actual tapping arm. So first thing I got to do is I got to put this peg in there. And the only thing that this peg does is keep my workpiece from rotating. You'll notice it's not held in a vise. So that's just going to pinch up against there as I'm turning the workpiece, or turning the tap, excuse me, and hold that workpiece in place. We're going to follow the same method as we did with the hand tapping, where we go in about a turn and back up to break the chip. This one's a little more susceptible to breaking smaller taps because we have a lot more leverage on here. Now, one of the benefits of using this machine is that it keeps our workpiece and our tap perfectly perpendicular to each other. So we don't have to eyeball whether or not the tap is straight in the hole. It lines it up for us. And when you're all done, just go ahead and remove the entire handle. Just be careful that you don't set it down on the tap, as those taps are kind of fragile. The last method we're going to use is the pneumatic tapping arm. This is by far the quickest, but also the most dangerous method. So we want to make sure that we have our workpiece held securely in the vise. You never want to attempt to try to use this holding on to your workpiece. It will spin in your hand and cut you up pretty good. So we're going to put in a chuck that has our tap in it. They're clutch chucks. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So that just snaps in. It's just a quick release, kind of like an air hose adapter. So on the handle's going to have two levers. A large lever is going to be depressed to make the tap go clockwise. And while you're holding a large lever, if you push the round button on the opposite side, it'll automatically switch the rotation to counterclockwise so you can back it out. Now, I talked about them being clutched. So what that means is that if it clogs up with chips, it hopefully will not break the tap. It clutches out. It's kind of like your drill driver. If you have experience with those where you can set it to where it stops turning at a certain amount of torque, this is kind of the same way for the tap. So if that happens, you just back it out, clear the chips, and then continue tapping through back and forth until you're done. So this is a very fast method, and the tapping arm is designed so that it keeps the tap perpendicular to the workpiece so you don't have to line it up. Once you get it lined up with the hole, just pull the lever. It'll drive itself through. When you reach the bottom of the hole, press the round button on the opposite side and it'll back itself out. If you kind of have to peck at it back and forth, that's fine. Once you're done with it, remove the chuck and you are complete. When you're done, just check your holes with a screw. Make sure that it threads in nicely, doesn't take a lot of pressure. You might have to clean some chips out of there. If it does feel too tight or you didn't go all the way through, just thread your hand tap back in and chase them all the way down. That concludes our tapping video. I hope you guys learned something, and we'll see you in the next one.